But now Jesus called his disciples and said, I am moved with pity for the multitude. It is 3 days now since they have been in attendance on me, and they have nothing to eat. I must not send them away fasting, or perhaps they will grow faint on their journey. His disciples said to him, Where could we find loaves enough in a desert to feed such a multitude? And Jesus asked them, How many loaves have you? 7, they said, and a few small fishes. Thereupon he bade the multitude sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fishes with them, and when he had blessed and broken, he gave these to his disciples, and his disciples to the multitude. And they all ate and had enough, and they took what was left of the broken pieces, 7 hampers full. 4,000 men had eaten, not reckoning women and children. And so taking leave of the multitude, he went on board the ship, and crossed to the region of Magedon. And the Pharisees and Sadducees came and put him to the test, asking him to show them a sign from heaven. But he answered them, When evening comes, the sky is red, and you say it is fair weather. Or at sunrise, the sky is red and lowering, there will be a storm today. You know then how to read the fate of heaven. Can you not read the signs of appointed times? It is a wicked and unfaithful generation that asks for a sign. The only sign that will be given to it is the sign of the prophet Jonah. And so he went on his way and left them. Hello and welcome to you, wherever you may be. When I heard the story of Jesus, many times I was thinking to myself, how can you make a sandwich out of fish and bread without any butter or mayonnaise? Perhaps if the fish was smoked, it would sort of work. That's what was running in my mind those several times when I heard this story. And here he talks about the red sky in the morning and the red sky in the evening lowering. Red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning. That is remembered. The beginning and the end of the day are the transitions between the light and the darkness. Something happens there, something should happen there, and something shouldn't happen there. Well, this week I've got a long passage with Fritz Peters, who was a very close student of Gurdjieff, very close because he was born almost in the Priory, and spent his younger years watching all the European and American intellectuals arrive to see the mystic. And Peters always had a slightly different disposition to Gurdjieff, as we shall see. It's quite long, and I'll read it out now. Fritz Peters here talking in about 1945. I was still feeling wonderful when I returned to Mr. Gurdjieff's apartment at 10 o'clock in the evening, and after introducing me to a large group of his students as his real son, who had been at his real school, he immediately put me to work in the kitchen. Once again, he seemed very tired, and he left me in charge of the food while he went off to rest. For the second time that day he was gone for 15 minutes, and when he reappeared I was struck once more by his renewed strength and energy. We had a very lively and for me very amusing supper. We still communicated with one another in a kind of shorthand, which was both amusing and irritating for the other guests. Irritating largely because, to his apparent delight, I found most of his conversations extremely funny and could not refrain from laughing, which only served to increase his amusement. The other guests were confounded largely because his remarks did not seem on the surface funny to them. There was one woman present who seemed especially irritated with our laughter because she spent most of the time asking his advice about very serious problems. As he listened to her questions, he would wink at me, and the first time told me in Russian that if I listened carefully I would learn how funny the truth could be. She said, among other things, that being rich she felt that she was at a disadvantage in her understanding of his work, and that she often assumed that her so-called friends would not really like her if she did not have any money. Gurdjieff said that the solution to these problems was simple enough. She could give her money to him, knowing that he would make good use of it. She could then live among the poor and would quickly learn, since she would have no money, whether or not she had real friends. As to understanding his work, he said that she would have to learn first to understand. His replies were so obvious and so typical of him when people insisted upon questioning him at meals, which were always a period of diversion for him, that I could not help but laughing, which again amused him a great deal. When she objected to our laughter, he said that she would learn, as I had recently learned, that laughter was in truth a very good medicine. When we had finished our supper, he dismissed everyone, but told me to stay and help him with the dishes. We did the dishes together and then retired to a small room, a sort of pantry, with various foods and herbs hanging from the ceiling and stored on the shelves, where we drank coffee and he played on his harmonium. We played much of the music I had known at the Priory, and although we did not talk very much at first, it was a rather sentimental, emotional reunion. When he finished playing, he broke our mood suddenly by asking me if I didn't need some American cigarettes. Once more I began to laugh, since cigarettes were not only plentiful at that time in the army but also very cheap. He laughed with me and said that it was a great pleasure to enjoy laughter with someone again, that one of the saddest aspects of his life was that his students were so impressed with him. They could never condescend to anything so low as laughter. I told him that I agreed with this, but that I felt, as I told him once before, that it was his own fault that he put the stars in their eyes. He agreed readily and seemed pleased that I would kid him, as he put it. I said that while I had refused the cigarettes, I would like to give him something, and offered him several thousand francs which I had made on the black market by trading in various currencies, an art which I had only learned recently. He looked at the money for a moment and then asked seriously, "Why, you give me this?" I said that it was a sum that I had made out of the blue and illegally, and that I thought he could have more fun with it than I could. He smiled at my reply and then said thoughtfully that he had thought that I had intended the money as payment for something. I said quickly that I thought that money could only pay for things, and that this money, because of its origins, the way I had acquired it, was really play money, and that while I had certainly needed to play, he did also. He was satisfied with this and agreed to take it on that basis, but only if I would accept a carton of cigarettes. I laughed and said I would, and he then said that it was important to exchange useless presents from time to time. He then referred to his conversation with the woman at the supper table and said, "You see what trouble I have with students. She asks stupid questions and I give stupid answers. But even though stupid, they honest. But same is true even when someone very rare asks a genuine question. When I give true answer, Her unconscious already know answer is true, because unless already know answer, unconscious cannot ask question. But even so she think I make the joke, so will not listen. In teaching is necessary to remember that no one really asks questions. Impossible to ask question about something you not already know, already have good idea. So I only give answers which you already know. Answer to such question everybody already know. Is usual when person ask me question to already know two answers. One pleasant, one unpleasant. Not really ask question, only want confirmation. Want pleasant answer from other person than self, because already know pleasant answer not right. But if other person like myself give pleasant answer, then can say to self that I tell this answer, and so not have to worry with conscience, because it's my fault. But for serious man, is not necessary find new answers, but new questions. Once you ask question, this means you already have very good idea about answer. For teacher is important to make student ask new questions. This reason why education in your country and in modern times is upside down. Teacher in school never make new student ask new questions or try to discover new thing. Only answer old questions to which everyone already have answer or can find answer. He poured coffee and Armagnac for us again and then went on. This woman not take me seriously and so will not discover anything. What I tell her is truth. If she could give up money and have to live like a poor person, she would create possibility for two things. First, would find out what other people like, how they live, and also find out how much about herself, that she, stupid shit person, only have value of her money. Cannot be understanding between rich and poor, because rich and poor both only understand money. One understand life with money and despise people without money. Other understand life without money and hate people who have money. This woman now hates self because guilty about being rich. Poor man hates self or sometimes just life because feel guilty about not having money or feel cheated. With such unreal false attitude, impossible understand any serious thing like my work. For instance, this woman tell that I most important influence in her life, but would be impossible for her to give me her money. So very simple, she not tell truth. I not important for her life, but only her money important. With poor man can be same thing, can believe in me, and what I teach only if I first teach how to make money. This what poor man think, not so. If I teach him how to make money, then he will have only other problem. He will not be able to live without this money. But such people can learn important thing if can make effort in self to give up, or if poor to give up desire for money. But all these things very difficult for your contemporaries. He smiled at me reminiscently and then went on. You remember Priory? How many times I have struggled with money. I not make money like others make money. And when I have too much money, I spend. But I never need money for self, and I not make or earn money. I ask for money, and people always give. And for this I give opportunity, study my teaching. Except for the fact that there were no grounds and gardens in which Mr. Gurdjieff's students could labour any more, the teaching of his method did not seem to me to have changed very much. There were still readings, lectures, dance groups and interviews with particular students. The only thing missing in the general ambiance was the Priory itself. On the other hand, there was a change, at least it was new to me, in at least a part of Gurdjieff's own activity. I noticed almost immediately that there were a number of daily visits at his apartment by older people, most of whom did not appear to have much, if anything, to do with his work. Not only were they old, but they all appeared to be poor. Gurdjieff's attitude towards these people bore little resemblance to his treatment of those persons who were quite obviously his students. He treated them with courtesy, kindness, and I gathered a generosity. During the course of one of our own private sessions in the coffee room, I spoke somewhat hastily about this retinue, and the fact that he appeared to me to be helping, if not actually supporting, a great many people who did not seem to be in any way involved in his work. I do not remember my exact words, but I remember that the implication was that he was helping in the perpetuation of persons who, unless I had misunderstood him in the past, were, to use his phrase, nothing more than a fertilizer. Patiently, although I detected a note of irritation in his voice, he explained that I was confusing an issue and that I had not understood him completely in the past. In the first place, fertilizer per se was not a bad thing to be, if there was in this life no other possibility. And more to the point, if the given individual was not striving for some other destiny. There are quite a few things in that passage. If we go back to the conversation with the lady, Gurdjieff says that we should look for new questions rather than answers. Well, that was a long time ago. Today, the whole internet and the popular media talk about asking questions and questions and questions. It just becomes a lot of nonsense. The era has changed. The only thing that is important always is to evolve, which means that you have to reach forward a little bit with a question and then you have to answer it, and only the two together mean that you're growing. And Gurdjieff's teaching is about growing. What does growing mean? It means that you have the actual ability to do real things in the world, things like sawing wood carefully and accurately, so that it can be used in different projects. That is something that is real. Leading an army into battle and having a strategy for success is another thing. Knowing how to be married wonderfully and with light, that is another thing. These things are real. It's amazing to me when I think about all the spiritual teachings that I've heard from so many different quarters, how they imagine that being a noble or higher or enlightened creature doesn't come with actual tangible ability. Like, what would be the point of being enlightened if you couldn't actually do anything? If you couldn't mow the lawn, if you didn't know how to plough a field, and you should do. Actually, if we look, certain teachers, and not much was made of it, really. Sometimes by looking at the biography of particular teachers, you can see that this person actually had higher abilities, and that they achieved in their life. Gurdjieff describes this lady at dinner complaining about her money, and he says that she wanted some kind of justification. She wanted to blame it on him or something so that she could feel better and not feel conscience. But I think that is quite an abstract thing. And for me, the answer is always the dissolution of the false self. That lady had a false self. A false self means that there is activity in the headspace, particularly the psychological many eyes that are crystallized and that shift position continuously through the day. Sometimes you have a character on your face that is happier, sadder, that is exuberant, that is this, that is that represents different forms of crystallization. And these things disrupt your identity. These characters within the false self disrupt your sense of a unified identity, and they disconnect you from the identity in the core of you, in your body. So the identity for human beings flows from different regions of the body, which have different eras of processing, because the older eras are in the torso, the newer eras of intelligence and psychological activity are in the head. And the problem for human beings is that these are disconnected, and it creates all sorts of problems. Projection, people know the word projection. It means when you feel something inside of yourself, but you as if project it onto the world outside. You see this man that's passing you as your angry grandfather, and then you respond to this man as if you were responding in the past to your angry grandfather. That's a projection. And this is caused by the mismatch of different characters in the head and the disconnection of that with the core identity in the body. So you have different signals of identity that creates one hell of a big mess on the planet. That resolving that situation resolves all problems. That is the only real problem. It's hard to judge anybody or criticize somebody or anything. Everything is just total chaos on this planet because of that. And what is required for the so-called salvation, meaning evolution of humanity, is to find methods to do that. That is the answer, by the way, in case I get run over tomorrow. Okay, a couple of other bits that came up this week. This morning I was making breakfast and I had a small jug of milk which I knocked over with the back of my hand and it went all over the table. Why did that happen? It happened because there were two of the many eyes active at the same time. One was controlling my left hand and knocked over the jug. That's just a small example. Another thing that I noticed this week, which probably of only interest to people who are interested in the seasonal stuff that I talk about, but in the autumn when you've got the wide open white skies and the skies are cleared because the activity of the summer, the hot summer, the fragrance, the noise, the partying, the bees buzzing, all the fragrance in the sky, which is the sort of crescendo of the yearly cycle, that has fallen through the autumn to the ground, leaving this open space with nothing in it. That is the autumn sky. It's very windy. A lot of wind passes through these white, almost luminescent skies. And that has a particular meaning because it's like the heaven is there, but it is now empty. And you can see straight through it in that great space. And it also has a further and rare meaning, which has to do with the 3 octaves. This week I was listening to a woodblock artist, David Ball, who makes Japanese woodblock prints, and he was remarking that several hundred years ago when woodblock carving started in Japan, that prints were given out without a frame, perhaps to be put in a drawer, and that there was no glass in front of them. They were not framed. And so when you saw a print, you actually saw the ink. Your vision was in touch with the ink and the paper. directly without any glass in the way. And so presumably the emanations would go straight into you. And that's just one way that society has started to sheathe the works of other people so that you do not receive the direct emanation. And to just reiterate an important idea, that what is called religion, this is intended to be the highest culture that exists on planet Earth, that is known within the society of men on the planet. It is intended for the elite. And the methods of it use the subtle body, the Kesdran body, our higher abilities, and the methods are quite difficult to perform. And although during the Ghibelline era in Europe, from what I understand, the royal families there were very interested, today it seems not. And certainly most of the spiritually curious people on the planet do not have the ability to do more than to carry the emotional wave, to try and keep it alive. In many parts of society, there is one group of people who are trying to keep something alive, but they don't have the ability to resurrect it. They need help from somebody else to resurrect it. There's a call for help from one part of society that is often not answered. And it needs to be answered. That's all for today. I wish you well and thank you for listening. Please take care.